If you're constantly recruiting and constantly mentoring, you're doing 2 of the 7 things that a leader has to do every week. I also have to coach the team. And whether that's coaching my leaders on how to be better coaches, or whether that's coaching individual contributors directly, if you're in that first line role, you've got to provide feedback. And you've got to create a system and a framework so that feedback can be received. You're thinking about not just giving people this constructive feedback on how to get better, but all kinds of feedback. And can you create a system where that feedback gets shared amongst others? I, again, had wholeheartedly approached this idea of doing live demos, live presentations. We do that at Liquid Metal. Every Wednesday, I run an all hands for the entire company, and we call it the hot seat. It was a name, again, I learned from the same individual I mentioned before, Rory. And I've just used the name because it's awesome. And what we do is just live demos. Like, what did you build this week as an engineer on the team? What did you build? Just demo it in front of everyone. And you can go, hey, that's awesome. You should do this. You should do that. Now, I'm not the one always giving the feedback. You've created a system now where feedback is part of the culture, and coaching is part of the culture, where everyone's helping each other. And so that's another one. So how do you mentor? How do you coach? How do you recruit? There's the reviewing piece. There's obviously the inspection part. And that might be, there's so many frameworks out there. We always use MedPick, and I think that's really an inspection for a deal. 10-10-2406 is way more on the input metrics, which was what I always thought about. There's others. How many demos did you do? How many calls did you make? How many, whatever is important at the time, figure out how you can measure it and put a system in place so that you don't have to go look for it. It just surfaces. It may be in someone's weekly, it may be a report or a dashboard that comes out of a Salesforce, but that reviewing piece is important. You got to spend some time thinking about why. What are those indicators that really say things are going well or they're not? And, people have used, hey, we don't have enough pipeline. Okay, well, why not? Well, because we told the salesperson they need to go grow their pipeline. Well, do you think they didn't think of that? You're not really coaching them. You're just reviewing the fact that something they already know. And we created that idea of the boardrooms, and you probably saw me teach that. That's the book I've been hoping to write, but never got around to. And that was for pipeline. Like, that idea came out of just being in the startup world and going to a board meeting and just spilling your guts about what's working and what's not, and realizing that the board is there to help, right? How can they help you accelerate? How can they help you add value? How can they make this introduction? And so boardrooms was this thing where we get the entire team together and think about pipeline and account positioning and how we go about on growing that business. So you've got to recruit, you've got to mentor, you've got to coach, and you've got to review, right? And so if you're doing those 4 things, you're pretty much off on the right track, right? You've got to develop your people. That might be, buying books for individual. I buy about 100 books a year for people. Just what's your address? I'm shipping it to your house. Hopefully some of your listeners were the recipients of those books. And I think anyone who's listening to this should be doing that. Right. It's just, you talk to someone, you're like, oh, I'm struggling with this. And if you've read enough books, there's probably a pattern match to go here, take this book and maybe it will help you. Let's talk about it when we have our next one-on-one or our next coaching session or whatever it happens to be. And ultimately now you've got this framework, and create your own 7. Those are the 5 that come off the top of my head. There's a few more, but just being live here, I can't really think of the others, but
no, it's fine. It's all good.
That's the thought. Make a 7 habits of how you handle your leadership work, and don't make inspect this, inspect that, inspect this, inspect that, the 7 things that you do every week. Build a team, mentor them, inspire them, create a vision for them, do all those things that are important that they're looking for you to do as a leader. Not just get on a forecast call and blast everyone that they don't have enough pipeline or they're not going to make their number. That's just, that's a bottom 1% leader, in my opinion, these days.
Yeah. So I want to unpack that. You gave us a lot to think about. And here's what I got. One, you've got the operational excellence and cadence that you talked about as a leader. So, and the things that you do every day. What I love about that is there's 2 things. One, it's they're deliberate, they're measurable, and they're repeatable. Right? That's the first thing that I got out of that. And that's what you want as a leader. You want to be able to do that. And the second thing, which is the most important one for me, and in my job now, what I do for people, is that everything you said is about leaving a legacy. And as a leader, we have to think like that. Leaving a legacy, meaning you just said the first thing you said was, hey, let's look at who can replace me. Let's look at, who's going to take over for me, because eventually, right, I'll move on somehow. Those are the kind of mindsets of a leader that is different and sets you apart as a leader. Calling up on the forecast call, and we've all had these leaders that'll say, your pipeline is not enough. Hey, you know what? And then the salesperson will say, well, what can I do? Give me something I can learn from. Make more calls. You got to be kidding me. Right? Yeah. I mean, and that just, all that does is just piss them off, right? So, that's not a leader, right? That's a manager. So if you want to manage people, you can do that other places. Go work at McDonald's. Right? I mean, let's be real here, right? A little bit provocative, right? Because that bullshit doesn't work, right? What works with leaders these days is having that servant leadership principle, and that is making sure that you're always adding massive value to every conversation as a leader. And that's leading the person and leading the go-to-market executive. Those are two different things, right, Geno? They're two different things. You've got to lead that person, and then you rise that person. You raise them to the next level. And that mindset is what you have, and that's why you have those 7 things. That's why a lot of those things you talked about is about legacy, is about, how do we get that person to the next level? And raise them up, right? That's fantastic, and that's sort of what I wanted to make sure you got out, and you were perfect. A gray straight man for new rehearsal. It was perfect. I love it. It's right here for you, right, Geno? I mean, this is right here. So what I love about Geno, pay attention. What I love about Geno, and I've always loved about Geno, he leads from here and not the head, right? It's the heart, not the head. Everything he's talked about, and that's the key, right? And still has that operational cadence, runs the business, measures it. He makes sure it's repeatable. He does all the right things, but it's from here. And that's the difference.